Defense. As we pointed out earlier, the accused persons chose to make unsworn statements and consequently they were not cross-examined. The accused persons 2, 3, and 4 endorsed the statement of accused 1 and denied the charges against them. Guys, did you notice that all these people talking, nobody mentioned Victor Banjo? Nobody mentioned accused 1. They just accused 2, 3, and 4. Okay, stay with me. The statement of accused 1 merely consisted of the activities of the accused persons in assisting the governor in one way or the other to prosecute the war successfully. He admitted that there was a group of young men who met occasionally to air their views on the current affairs of the state and the war. This group, he said, never plotted to subvert the government. Who is the person that they're talking about, Victor Banjo? He said, he being Victor, he said that the accused persons could not have been parties to such a plot in view of their past performances and the high esteem in which they held the governor. We would like to point out that pursuant to Section 10, subsection 2 of the Law and Order Maintenance Edict, the evidence law and any other rule of evidence do not apply to the proceedings of a special tribunal as this one. In normal criminal trials, a court is always reluctant to convict an accused on the uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice. Please listen to this, guys. Please pay attention, guys. In normal criminal trials, a court is always reluctant to convict an accused on the uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice. But in the present trial, what matters is the veracity of a particular witness in question, irrespective of whether he is an accomplice or not, or even whether the thing is corroborated or not. Also, under Section 13A of the edict, the onus or burden of proof is on the accused to show that he had lawful authority to make preparations for carrying on subversion, or that he did not make such preparations. I'm going to explain what is. If you're a lawyer, please you explain to us when we bring people up. Wait, is the burden of proof not supposed to be on the prosecution? Why should the burden of proof be on the accused person? Anyway. Thank you, because I thought if you are the one accusing somebody, you should be the one to present the burden of proof is on you, not on the accused. So you are calling me guilty until I prove myself innocent. Meanwhile, what we know is that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. We are saying you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. Everything in this day Biafra is upside down. Somebody said on YouTube, I noticed that nobody brought direct testimony against Banjo. Exactly. I'll take that part because thank God I think there's a lawyer here. I know you're a lawyer. Thank you. It says, also, under Section 13 of the edict, the onus or burden of proof is on the accused person to show that he had lawful authority to make preparations for carrying on subversion, or that he did not make such preparations, or that he did not make such preparations. If you say I made the preparations, why not prove that I made the preparations? Why am I the one telling you I did not make it by force? Like, I must prove. Let's continue. All that the prosecution need to do is to lead evidence to show grounds for suspecting that the accused persons have in fact been making such arrangements. I have evidence that I suspect you have been doing something, therefore you are guilty of that thing. Now prove yourself innocent. Oh boy, no wonder that place is the way it is. Everything called Dorikodoni. We have fully considered the evidence and all are satisfied that the original intention of this group of young men was genuine. We are also satisfied that all the accused persons were members of the group. We find as a fact, at a certain stage in the life of the group, the members felt that the army command and the leadership of the government should be changed. The statement of accused 1, quite apart from the evidence of prosecution witness 3, clearly showed that there was a great deal of discontent among them as regards the prosecution of the war and the implementation of state matters. Accused 1 had inadvertently listed all his own grievances against the head of state. His statements show that he actively participated and acquiesced in the decision of the group. There is nothing to... So that's Victor Banjo. So he's saying that accused one, that's Victor Banjo, had inadvertently listed all his own grievances against the head of state. His statements show that he actively participated and acquiesced in the decision of the group. There is nothing to suggest why prosecution witness 2... Listen to this crazy part though. There is nothing to suggest why prosecution witness 2 should lie against accused 2, or why prosecution witness 3 should lie against accused 3 and 4. Prosecution witness 3, a friend of all the accused persons, was forthright in his evidence. He admitted quite candidly his own part in the arrangement to overthrow the government. He impressed us as a witness of truth. All the witnesses are correct. All the accused are wrong. And you are telling me this is a trial. We find all the accused guilty in counts 1 and 2, and accused 2 guilty in count 3. Each accused maintains his former statement. Allocutus. That must be Latin. Sentence. First count. First accused, Victor Banjo, death by shooting. Second accused, that's Alale, death by shooting. Third accused, that's Ifajuna, death by shooting. Fourth accused, that's Samuel Agbam, death by shooting. Second count, first accused, death by shooting. Second accused, death by shooting. Third accused, death by shooting. Fourth accused, death by shooting. Third count, second accused, 10 years IHL. Sentence in count 3 to be concurrent with any sentence, His Excellency, the Governor might be disposed to impose pursuant to his powers under Section 15B of the Edict with reference to counts 1 and 2. Signed, G.C. Nkemena, Chairman. Signed, Brigadier U.O. Imo, Member. Signed, J. Udofia, Member. 23rd September 1967. The final curtain on the macabre proceeding was not yet down. Chukwuemeka Ojukwu had yet given his assent to the verdict, which the late Justice Nkemena, with 2 other members of the tribunal, had returned on the accused persons, and it was in order to speed things up that the late Justice Nkemena addressed the following letter dated 23rd September 1967 to Ojukwu. That letter reads, Your Excellency, Special Tribunal under the Law and Order Maintenance Edict of 1967, State versus Banjo and 3 others. I submit herewith the charge sheet, proof of evidence and verdict in the above case for Your Excellency's information. It is our view that the law will take its course. I remain Your Excellency's obedient servant, G.C. Nkemena, Chairman. Chukwuemeka Ojukwu, although rumor had it that he agonized over the matter for many hours, did not reprieve the 4 condemned men. He might have taken up this position not because he was lacking in humanity, he was, and mercy, he was, as because all the prophecies by the 4 men that the Midwest would be lost and that Enugu itself would soon be entered by federal troops were grimly coming to pass. And to make a decision for reprieve more difficult for Ojukwu, the public malice, in alliance with frustration, was busy heaping all the blame for all the disasters that were at the time the lot of Biafra on the heads of the 4 luckless men. Let me say something very quickly. Obedient movement is just like Biafra. It is led by the mob. It's a populist thing. Ojukwu would do whatever he had to do to please the people. Although Ojukwu is also the one that made the people believe what the people believe. I think Ojukwu is even smarter than the leaders of this movement, because at least he would determine the nonsense they believe. Then he will now act like he was acting based on the idea that they think they have, which was actually his own idea to begin with. Why am I even doing this series? If you're a Yorùbá person, please, if you hear anything political from some part of Nigeria, just sadanu. And don't come and tell me they are good people. They are good people, I know. Individuals are different from institutions. And institutions, in most cases, when it comes from ethnic spaces, will be based on culture. None of these people that we read, though, spoke against Victor Banjo, yet they killed him. I hope nobody will go through that before people start thinking straight. Let's get back into this. Nothing, so he said, to make a decision for reprieve more difficult for Ojukwu, the public malice, in alliance with frustration, was busy heaping all the blame for all the disasters that were at the time the lot of Biafra on the heads of the 4 luckless men. Nothing else but the death of the 4 men would assuage the red-hot public feeling against them or help Ojukwu to maintain that the war was being lost, not because of either his poor administration, or more truthfully, because of the superiority of the federal troops over the Biafran army, but because of the evil machinations of the 4 men. So let's forget the fact that we don't have enough weapons like Nigeria. Let's forget the fact that we don't even have plans. Let's forget the fact that we're shouting Afunauzo all over the place, carrying Dibia with cock, white cock, to go to battlefront, to go and be doing go one Afunauzo. Let's forget that one. It's not our fault. It's the fault of these 4 people, and they must be unalived. The law, in the terse and graphic language of the late Justice Nkemena, will take its course. This time in the nature of 4 men tied to the stake. In the nature of a body of troops facing the 4 men with loaded rifles. In the nature of a hysterical mass yelling, "Shoot them! Shoot them!" from behind. In the nature of a grim-looking officer standing by to give the order. And in the nature of a deafening volley that would be followed by lolling heads. Indeed, some of the courses that the law occasionally takes in this world are littered with the smashed bodies of realists. While the trial and conviction of Victor Banjo, Philippa Lale, Emmanuel Fajuna, and Samuel Agbam was held in camera, their execution by a firing squad was conducted under the glare of massive publicity. Everybody who could stand the sight was permitted to go along and witness how Biafra deals with saboteurs. The execution was meant to serve 2 purposes: to demonstrate the determination of the Biafran leadership not to allow human beings, no matter however highly placed, to stand in its way to total victory. And as a deterring notice on any other elements that might in the future be tempted to preach or work against the war to the last man slogan. War to the last man slogan. War to the... Oh, you can't fear him, Baba Iti Agbani. Or if you must pardon him, this thing should not just be in books. It should be taught to children every year. You must live with the shame. But he's dead now. Those of you who support him are the one that will be shamed. The execution was meant to serve 2 purposes: to demonstrate the determination of the Biafran leadership not to allow human beings to no matter however highly placed, to stand in its way to total victory, and as a deterring notice on any other elements that might in future be tempted to preach or work against the war to the last man slogan. The inhabitants of Enugu, more in the spirit of a fiesta than with the air of solemnity of those about to witness a great human tragedy, started to wend their way to the place of the execution. The Enugu Biafran Army headquarters as early as 6 o'clock in the morning. The crowd of people on the way to this 20th century cavalry was so massive that thousands failed to get within eye reach of the execution platform. The day of the execution was September 25, 1967, and the time 1:30 p.m. But folks in Enugu were getting to the venue as early as 6 a.m. Like a crusade, like a revival program. In retrospect, many would say that the time interval between the trial, conviction, and execution of the four men was too short. But there was a very good reason for this. The federal troops at the Nsukka sector and under the command of Major Danjuma were slowly but steadily closing in on Enugu. If the four men were alive for too long, they might, it was feared, be abandoned in their condemned cells by the Biafran authorities in the great confusion that would follow the entry of the federal troops into Enugu, and might in turn be rescued by the federal troops. Thanks for the gift. Thanks, everyone. After all, they were believed by popular fancy to be the agents of the federal authorities. As the time of the execution approached, the four men were ushered forwards and without too much ceremony tied to their respective stakes. The administration of the right of supreme dispensation on the four men was equally a hurried affair. Victor Banjo, with his chest out and his head erect, was a picture of bravery and grace under the imposing pressure of death. Philip Alale, although his posture on the stake was slumpy, never gave up his penchant for talkativeness. He kept on loudly protesting his innocence. Emmanuel Ifajuna, with his head on his chest as though he was already dead, kept on mumbling that his death would not stop what he had feared most, namely, that the federal troops would inevitably enter Enugu, and that if those who were about to kill him meant to stop this from happening, the only way they could go about it was to ask for a ceasefire and after start negotiation with the federal Nigerian authorities. Samuel Agbam was already dead, even if not clinically so. Everything, his nerves or his mental and intellectual ability to reconcile his conscious self with the grim fact of impending death, had deserted him. He was a true embodiment of the terrible epitaph of, quote-unquote, it was a dog that died. Then a body of soldiers drew up with their automatic rifles at the ready. On the order of their officer, they quickly formed themselves into the classic flanks of a firing squad. At another order, they leveled their guns at the bed chests of the four men who had been tied to the stakes. It was now merely a matter of seconds. Death, with its ugly grin, was about to claim the four men for its own. Then came the final order of fire. Philip Alale slumped. Emmanuel Ifajuna slumped. Samuel Agbam had already slumped before the guns opened up. And thousands of those who witnessed the execution went home with the story that he had already died of fear before he was hit by the bullets of the firing squad. But Victor Banjo, as though determined to prove that he was not only intellectually brave, but even infinitely physically more so, needed more than a volley from the firing squad to die. As the first volley cut down his luckless colleagues, he promptly lifted his arrogant and proud head and shouted, "I am not dead yet." Then there was another volley. But even this did not quite finish off the brave Banjo, although his shout of "I am not dead yet" was fainter this time, as if death, despite the determination of his will, was Oh, shoot, man. 1 second, guys. A body of soldiers drew up with their automatic rifles at the ready. On the order of their officer, they quickly formed themselves into the classic flanks of a firing squad. At another order, they leveled their guns at the bed chests of the four men who had been tied to the stakes. It was now merely a matter of seconds. Death, with its ugly grin, was about to... Emmanuel Ifajuna slumped. Samuel Agbam had already slumped before the guns opened up. And thousands of those who witnessed the execution went home with the story that he had already died of fear before he was hit by the bullets of the firing squad. But Victor Banjo, as though determined to prove that he was not only intellectually brave, but even infinitely physically more so, needed more than a volley from the firing squad to die. As the first volley cut down his luckless colleagues, he promptly lifted his arrogant and proud head and shouted, "I'm not dead yet." Then there was another volley, but even this did not quite finish off the brave Banjo. Although his shout of "I'm not dead yet" was fainter this time, as if death, despite the determination of his will, was busy dragging away his soul from his shattered body. It was only after the third volley from the firing squad that Victor Banjo fell silent in death. Emmanuel Ifajuna was right. His execution and that of his three colleagues did not stop the steady advance of the federal troops into Enugu. By 4 p.m. the same day, the gunners of the federal troops had started to bracket the Enugu target with such accuracy that Radio Biafra came so close to falling within range of one of their shells. A development that forced the radio men, with the exception of one newsman, the late Mr. Rex Elazo, who rushed to the broadcasting room to finish a bulletin that a newscaster had abandoned, to scamper away in all directions in search of safety. Victor Banjo, Philip Alale, Emmanuel Ifajuna, and Samuel Agbam, through the peculiar twist that history often provides every great human tragedy, went to their maker shortly after the artillery shells from the gunners of the federal troops started to send the executioners backing out of Enugu. The fall of Enugu some few days later, after the execution of the four men who had sought by suggesting ceasefire and negotiation to stop the city from falling, is the only satisfaction, if indeed the dead retain any such thing as the feeling of satisfaction, that the four men must have carried with them back to their maker. You know, this happened in 1967. It's been 58 years, and it's very touching. It's very touching. It's very touching, right? All for what? For what? We read his testimony. I was trying to prove he was loyal to Ojukwu for what? He loved Ojukwu for what? This pandering that young Yorùbá people do, this pandering that a lot of us do, it never ends well. Never ends well. Ayomikun Awosheyi, absolutely. Ayomikun is asking if I'm interested in writing a Victor Banjo movie script. Oh yes. Everything I'm saying here will eventually come out as movies. So yes. Whether it's the coup itself, everything. If Enugu was overrun by the federal troop in 1967, how then did the war end in 1970? Because Enugu is not the only place in Biafra. They moved the operational headquarters to Maya. They were fighting from present-day Abia State. Oh boy. Nigeria's story has been a single story. And the loudest voices are the ones who tell you they are the victims of everybody else. But I'm going to tell you something. The East is culpable. The East hurts people. They hurt individuals, they hurt families, they hurt ethnic groups. And because many of the loud ones are ridiculously stupid, they would never admit. Because it takes stupidity not to admit when you're wrong. And unnecessary arrogance with no basis for the arrogance, but they're just this. Sorry, I'm just angry. This one was saying, "Oh, he's my friend. We are working together. I've known him for years." They've known each other since in the 50s. Oh, at this point, they've known each other more than 10 years. For more than 10 years. Listen, you can cry for the dead. I feel like crying myself. If you notice, I took my head off the frame because I needed to, do the needful. But beyond that, what are the lessons that we learn from this? Number one, if a Yorùbá person and you have been part of this, and I'm going to call some of these things and put it out there, and I promise by the grace of God, all these things, whether it was the coup itself, the way it was executed, this Victor Banjo story, everything will eventually come out as movies. Let me tell you something, just in case you don't know. I'm actually a writer and a filmmaker and a theater director. For a Yorùbá person, the price of loyalty in Biafra for Yorùbá people is death, is betrayal. That's the price of loyalty. If you're loyal, you're betrayed. Now, Biafra did not end in 1970. There's no territory called Biafra, and it will never happen, by the way. It will never happen. No matter how much they try, it will never. The blood of people will speak against that idea. Apart from the fact that it's a thieving plan, it's a thieving dream. It's a dream built on stealing other people's resources and lands. The lives that were lost, including Igbo lives, will speak against that idea. Do you know how many Igbos died because of this stupid idea that one arrogant person just came up with? Their own blood too will make sure it never happens. But that's not even the point I'm trying to make. That idea, that thing of never taking responsibility for anything, that selfish idea, that ability, that idea of stealing other people's stuff, of territorial expansionism, that thing is still alive and well. But guess what? They require certain people in those spaces to work as useful idiots in order to get what they really want. It's because of those people I'm doing this series. Somebody's talking about how brave. Of course, Victor Banjo was brave. Guess what? When they saw the bravery, what did they say? Yorùbás are cowards. Why? Because in order to make up for their cowardice, in order to make up for the lack of bravery and courage, they will call you who they are. And then appropriate everything about the culture is appropriation. And the crazy part is that they never give credit. If a person is saying, "I'm not dead though," you kill him again. "I'm not dead though," you kill him. I can, of course, appreciate the bravery of Victor Banjo, but why did he have to die? Why? You see, you can't cry for the dead. If you are alive, all this your movement, please. One second before we go, I want to read something to you guys. I want to read something from his sister. Because all this I'm joining obedient movement, it's not only you that's going to affect, it will affect your family. These guys don't care. They don't care. I'll read just parts of it. There's a chapter in our book called The Family in Crisis. You know the crazy part? She said something in this book. I'm not going to read everything. She said something in the book that it was until their mother died that they could talk about the death of Victor, because until she died, she told everybody that her son was in prison. I'll read parts of it to you here. September 27, 1967, I'm reading the book A Break in the Silence by F. Adetomo Ogunsheye. Who is she? Victor Banjo's older sister. September 27, by the way, she was the first female professor in Nigeria's history. Interestingly, Victor Banjo's daughter, Olayinka Omigbodun, was also the first female professor of psychiatry in Nigeria. All right, so this is from his sister. September 27, 1967 was an ordinary day. I had not been listening to the radio or reading the local newspapers. They were noted for their one-sided news in favor of the government in power. I had already decided to protect myself from them. Ayo came in halfway through the afternoon looking distressed. Ayo is her husband. Ayo came in halfway through the afternoon looking distressed. He went straight up the stairs, breaking down. I had never seen him so upset. He was bawling with grief and rage. The details of the execution coming through his sobs. My first thought was mother in Bodija. Bodija is a place in Ibadan. I drove out to her and arrived dry-eyed. I could not cry. I refused to believe. I thought it was part of the federal government propaganda launched against Banjo, which had been on since the successful liberation of the Midwest. I gave mother a garbled version of the news, and mother did not let me finish before she rejected. Impossible. How can Ojukwu kill my son? Who had been helping him? Mama said. I'll take that again. Impossible. How can Ojukwu kill my son who had been helping him? Mama said. We had had first-hand information that he was helping to train the Biafran army, so we followed her to reject the possibility out of hand. When a few brave friends came to pay condolences, mother refused to accept them and rejected it out of hand. Father came from Ijebu to console mother, but was not allowed to do so by her. He left a totally confused and disturbed man. He had lost a gem of a son and was not even allowed to mourn him. He sent family delegation and emissaries from home to persuade mother of the truth of the matter. Mother was adamant on her stand. It became a psychological issue when day after day more information filtered through about Victor's demise. But no one could reach mother. We had to defer to her, realizing that mother's world and faith would collapse if we insisted that she should accept. We felt that become an escape device to enable her to go on living. The family, rightly or wrongly, decided to let sleeping dog lie and leave mother to live the rest of her days believing that Victor was alive. Thus, Victor remained unmourned by his family. All his brothers and sisters, except myself, were away from Nigeria. Victor's wife and children were safely in Sierra Leone. There was no corpse to lament over and mourn. No funeral obsequies, that word always twists my tongue, was required. We just refused to sit and accept condolences. Most of us hoped mother was right and that Victor would one day come walking into the house. I still have dreams about his homecoming, even 25 years after.